Welcome to another edition of CrowCast Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by the team at CrowCast, of course. Otherwise it'd be called something else, I guess. With me tonight is the usual suspects, and we'll get straight into it. G'day, Peter. How you going?
I'm well, Fian. Yourself?
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody.
Good. Going all right. Nick, how you doing?
I'm going very well, thank you.
Pleased to hear it. And Macca, you're a bit under the weather.
Yeah, I had a little skin cancer cut out the top of the head and became infected, and it was affecting the whole eyeballs and a whole lot sort of stuff. But a few antibiotics, we'll be back on board again.
Very good. Well, let's crack right into it and get into the news, shall we?
Geez, it's hard to know where to even start. I guess we're all getting a little bit excited about the start of the season with another terrific win in the JLT over GWS by 18 points to the men, and then, of course, also the women having another terrific result, just marching on their merry way with another win over the GWS as well. So it was a very, very good effort by both of the sides, and then, of course, rounded out by the reserves trial against Norwood, and a pretty comfortable win for the boys down at the parade as well. So really a terrific weekend, and all seem to be well in place for the start of the season in 2 weeks' time. I guess from a news perspective, a lot of the talk around media circles at the moment are the new rules and how those are playing out. There's been particular attention paid to the 50-metre turning into a 100-metre, when you think the AFL couldn't get any more ridiculous with some of the things that it comes up with. We've now got this situation where we're getting 100-metre penalties, and the solution to that seems to be that we've got to get a guy downfield to take the mark who may well be standing a player down in a defensive position, and he needs to take the mark sort of 50 metres down the ground. So anyway, that's something that seems to be a fairly hot talking point, as well as the steadfast refusal by the AFL to do anything about the issue with the runners as well. That seems to be set in stone, and I, for one, actually like that rule. I used to drive me insane the amount of time that runners would spend on the ground, and I have no doubt that they were there filling space and forming part of their team zone. So quite happy with that one myself. But they seem to be the really big sort of hot issue topics at the moment for comment, everybody.
I'd like my first crack at it because I feel red hot about the 50, 100-metre rule, because I had a bit of a feast on footy over the long weekend, made a point of watching virtually nearly every game, and I saw every one of those stupid 100-metre decisions that were given away, and not one of them was in a normal, any way, shape or form should be justified. What happens is the umpire says 50 metres and points to the guy with the ball. He sprints away. Now, there's no way the guy behind him can actually keep up with him. And the minute he starts chasing, then they call another 50 metre. It's because they're within 5 metres or 10 metres or whatever the stupid rule is. And it is an insane rule invented by an idiot. And I heard the idiot talking on the radio tonight, and he would not back down on it. He said it's here to stay. Look, the game of football belongs to the players, to the coaches, and to the spectators. It doesn't belong to you, you idiot. You can't just make up stupid rules and think that because you made them up, they're the greatest thing on earth. Everybody makes mistakes, and you've made one, a bad one. The only thing I like about it is I rang up 5AA about it, and I got a $100 voucher out of it. So that's the only thing I like about it. But it is the most stupid rule I have ever seen given them to this game. Your comment on the runners, I agree with you about the runners filling up space, and Port Adelaide used to be the masters of that. But I do still think, for example, it would not be stretching it too far, to say you've got 3 uses of the runner per quarter, and the runner can only be on the ground for a minute and a half or whatever it is while he's on the ground in those 3 times per quarter. Because I think that it doesn't hurt to have. You do need a bit of communication. And the way that the rules are now with the 666 situation, you're going to get a situation where you're going to get an avalanche of goals going down one end and I can understand a coach wanting to send something out, a message out about how to structure up slightly differently. But that's I think all the rest of their rules are very good. But the 50, which I call the 100-metre rule, is insane.
They actually had a perfect example of how to stop those little frees, etc., things like that, and keeping the game going, which is what happens in the SANFL, which is a 25-metre penalty. Of course, they are not going to follow that because it's an SANFL rule. I actually think that's one of the best things to do because they need to have a little bit of a penalty. It shouldn't be that 15 metres for what they're essentially paying for now. It's just ridiculous. And you're spot on, Macca. I mean, they're not going to back down because they've made this particular rule and they're digging their little hole and they have to be correct on everything. The AFL needs to actually understand that we're not stupid. We understand they've once again fucked up. And they actually need to come out and say, okay, our bad, we got that wrong. We actually didn't understand the consequences of the rule change, which anybody could have told us if we thought about it properly. But I think it needs to go to the 25-metre penalty, and I did quite like, I think it was one of the women's games where they were talking about one of the 50-metre, and somebody actually mentioned, well, they do a 25-metre in the SANFL, and the other commentators were, oh, that's actually a really great idea. But it's never going to happen because it's an SANFL implemented rule.
I could have sworn that Nikki just dropped the F-bomb there. I don't know. Maybe you might want to replay that, Fane. I surely didn't hear that as I thought I heard it.
It's actually happened a couple of times recently, and I'm starting to become a little bit concerned.
Go read the academic research on if you swear more, you're more intelligent.
Yeah, well, that's the premise I've been operating under for quite some time, Nick. Look, my take on the 50-metre rule is very similar to everyone else's. It's just farcical. It's farcical. There's enough of a penalty in the actual distance without then allowing the player essentially free rein with the ball. And any sort of movement towards him while he's got free rein of the ball is just another 50-metre penalty. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand it. I'm a little bit less on the runner situation. My own view is it's a bit of a solution looking for a problem.
It's...
Hang on, Nikki. Nikki, do I have to mute you already? I'm probably with you, Macca, with regards to allowing it on a limited basis during play. I would actually, what I would do would be to include it in the interchange cap. So every time your runner goes on the ground, it's actually one less interchange rotation you're allowed to have.
I like that.
But that being said, I understand it's been a problem at times in the past. There's, Armfield for Port and Maxwell for GWS at times. And it's like anything, the coaches will try and exploit things. But, we've got 3 umpires on the ground. We've got stewards, we've got boundary umpires, we've got goal umpires, we've got everyone that moves. It's quite simple to police where a runner can go on the ground, how long he can be on there for, and how often he can go on there in a quarter. And, I don't really see a problem in runners. I think every sport on the planet allows coaching during the game, and I don't see how ours can be any different. And because of the size of the ground, I don't see how else we can do it.
Yeah, every sport except tennis and gymnastics.
Well, when I
they're
say
barely the same, Nicky.
Just about every team sport, Nick.
Yeah, team sports. Most team sports all have that ability. All I was going to point out was that there is a problem, Phoenix, and you did name him then, which the main one is Maxwell recently. But the solution is actually making the umpires enforce the actual rule that's there.
Well, that's exactly
not creating
right.
another one.
Exactly right. And
actually get them to enforce that rule.
And that's where the AFL, in all of these rule changes, it makes a rod for its own back because it does make a rule to address a rule that hasn't been enforced. The very reason why hands in the back was brought in was because the umpires weren't enforcing the rule properly. And now we're back to a situation where it's interpreted Donkey, if you're listening, and, it's a grey area again. The runner situation is the same. The 50-metre rule is the same. If they actually enforce the rules consistently with logic, then we wouldn't have these problems.
And actually get in coaches that are ex-umpires and not coaches who are ex-players to coach umpires. There's your problem.
But the interesting thing about that 50-metre rule is that, it's just so illogical. There was one of the 50-metre rules, I think it was in the Essendon game, was the player who was standing the mark actually got slightly ahead of the bloke with the ball. So the bloke with the ball ran out 5-10 metres and bumped him sideways, and then the umpire pinged that guy for being within 5-10 metres of him.
And do you know why that is, Macca? Because the umpire's not watching. He's not actually umpiring appropriately, because what he would have seen out the corner of his eye was contact and made an assumption. And that's where I think one of the things that needs to be really looked at is who's in charge of what when it comes to the umpires. If the field umpire is supposed to be umpiring the mark or where the mark should be, then it should be the umpire in the previous zone that is watching out for infringements as he's running through. Not the guy that is bloody trying to administer the mark at the same time. They're never going to do it.
There's 3 of the bastards out there, though.
I know.
Three of them.
But that's also another problem, Macca, is that the positioning is specifically for the field umpires, that where they're being told to position is wrong. They can't see effectively what's happening because you've got people in charge of umpiring who don't understand umpiring. So
I don't think they understand football, Nikki.
Speaking of not understanding football, the tribunal has been at it again.
That's a magnificent segue.
Yeah. Seriously, they're trying to get all the cockwombles for the start of the year.
Unbelievable that we still have the Hawthorn jumper punch, and regardless of all the things that the AFL have come out and said about that issue, we have seen, and the evidence is there, that the Hawthorn jumper punch or gut punch is still alive and well. Stephen May, of course, lost his appeal, and he will, Port just seem to have that little bit of knack when they come up against a team to have key players suspended. So May will be out of round 1 against Port Adelaide. So a couple of interesting decisions there.
How does this situation continue? How does it How can they line up the events that have happened in JLT so far and come up with essentially 4 different answers? I just don't understand it.
The only question is it the same people sitting on it?
It's not. It's not, Macca. That's the thing. It's a rotation of the panel. No. It's a rotation of a panel. They've gone back to the panel. God. It's not Christian doing it by himself anymore. It's a panel, and that's part of the problem, in my view. And if Christian hadn't been such a dickhead, that one-person situation might have worked, because now we're back to inconsistency because we don't have the same people adjudicating every week.
And then still not allowed to use consistency.
Not allowed to use precedent.
That is hopeless. Yeah. What that's really saying is just because we put the bloke in there that wasn't really that good last time, we'll scrap that whole idea. Why would you not have another crack with somebody who might have a better idea?
Why don't you have a black and white situation? If you hit someone with a closed fist, it's an automatic suspension. Or an automatic fine, or whatever the hell you want it to be. Just make it consistent.
Well, I heard very clearly with my own ears a representative of the AFL saying that any jumper punch will be penalised with suspension this year.
That's right.
Now they said that it openly and clearly, and it's happened and it didn't happen. So is it different rules for different people, different rules for different teams? What's going on? I mean, Walker goes for an unintentional situation. This guy does an intentional situation. He doesn't, and there's nothing said. It's just pathetic.
It's unfathomable, and I can't even say that word. But
you did.
Only just. Yeah, there's just no logic behind it. I always do the foreigner test. If you're a foreigner watching a game of AFL football, you surely cannot help but be confused utterly by even the first 2 weeks of JLT. We haven't even got into the bloody season yet.
Well, let's give a couple of ticks and bouquets, I suppose. I do like a couple of the rule changes. The 666 situation, I think, is going to be very good from a spectator's point of view, not necessarily from a defender's point of view, but from a spectator's point of view, I think it's going to make football a little bit more exciting, and it's going to there will be more goals scored. There's a couple of other changes. What are the other major changes? There's another one I actually like. Bloody forgotten what it is. I got so angry about the other one. But I do like the 666 situation.
The kick out, smacker?
That's the other one. Thank you very much. I do like the idea of the kick outs getting past the 45, 50 metre mark, getting up perhaps 60, 70 metres, because it goes to a wider part of the ground, and which means there's more opportunity for open play. And I think from a spectator's point of view, and from a purist point of view, you're going to see a little bit better footy from those two changes.
Also, I guess a bit of news on the injury front. The very, very precious cargo that resides up on the Gold Coast, Isaac Rankin, has succumbed to the first-year blues of an AFL draftee and has quite a nasty hamstring injury, I think.
8 weeks.
But 8 weeks, is it? I heard that they thought that he should be fit for his first game for Adelaide in a year or so's time, and he should be good to go. But up until then, he'll probably be fairly proppy, I think.
You on the wine tonight, Pete?
If I could clap whilst holding down the push to talk, you would have got a round of applause for that, Pete. Well played, well played.
Well, I think he's every chance to want to come back at the end of the year.
Let's talk about that later, Mako. There's so much speculation.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing is, because I just saw it today, because I didn't get to watch too much of the games over the weekend, but Melbourne actually put an injured player back on the field, and it exacerbated his injury. I mean, how's the duty of care?
I saw that.
Play with one less player in the JLT.
Kennedy Harris.
No, he hyperextended his knee. There was another player who hurt his groin in a marking contest, but because they only had 17 players, they put him back on the ground, and he hurt it even more.
I couldn't believe it when they come back on the ground, and it's only a J, whatever the bloody letters are. It's only an alphabet bloody game.
Yeah, I think that kid's probably got a nice little case against the club there.
Eventually, for sure. What about the Paddy McCartan situation? That's a really worrying development. That he could. I don't know what the go is, but he's got another concussion. I think that they have to. And they should seriously look at whether this lad can continue playing. I think
eight since 2014, and I think the people around here. God, I mean, imagine being the person to tell the kid, "Look, your AFL dream is over because of a physical reason like that." But there really needs to be some serious consultation from the AFL Players Association. There needs to be the people around him, the coaching staff at St Kilda, and everyone just needs to take a step back and think about the kid's long-term health. You can't tell me that 8 concussions in 4 years is going to lead to a healthy outcome for that kid.
Well, I was about PJ's put up what I was about to say. There's actually 2 players there. Firstly, just dealing with the one that we're talking about, McCartan. I saw the incident in which he received the concussion, and I couldn't believe that he got concussion out of it.
It was pretty innocuous.
It was very, very innocuous, and I would be prepared to swear that 99.99% of players in the AFL would not have got concussion out of that, which leads on to what you were saying, Phoenix, that they've really got to look at whether this guy played football anymore or not, because there's going to be a major problem with him down the track, because he's going to there's going to be a lot of suffering down the track from it, I think. The other one is Robertson, who pulled up feeling very woozy, I think, with the words he
He
used,
was
something
ill.
like that.
Yeah.
After the
and
game.
he's had that heart
Now,
issue.
He's the guy who had the heart issue. He's the guy that fell over for no reason at all last year, and I can't believe that he's still playing footy too. So I think they've got a dual issue down there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
for,
what you might
for Robertson, he really did have to go through quite a lot of hoops to be cleared to go back to training, and then let alone another lot of hoops he had to go through and testing, etc., to go and play again. So I think they've taken a lot of care with him, and I know they have with McCartan as well. And it's something you and I've talked about, Fane, that we both wondered whether his diabetes is actually could possibly be linked with contributing to his issue, because he does have quite severe diabetes with what he has to cope with and go through on game day. I mean, the kid's got a great talent. It wasn't his choice to be the number one draft pick, so we're not going to, hang on to him about that. But I do think that there's possibly some research that needs to be done regarding that diabetes and the possible link with concussion that's around there. But
Nick, that's your mic too, by the way.
Oh, sorry. I'd just say that they've got to take a really good look at it. It's going to be a hard conversation to have with him.
And I think under the circumstances, if the Saints decide to put one or both of those players on long-term injury, or even if they retire, I think they need some dispensation. I know there's the facility for teams to use the state leagues, but I don't know when the cut-off date for that is.
Well, there's an issue about that as well, because the Swans have picked up a player who South Adelaide got in to replace Keegan Brooksby, who's off to West Coast, and now the Swans have nicked him 4 weeks out from the SANFL starting.
Yeah.
And they're getting no compensation.
I think it's the 21st, is it, the cut-off date?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how there can be no compensation for a listed player just to be pulled out of competition and inserted into another competition.
Very cruel on South Adelaide.
Well, I don't actually understand how the SANFL could allow that to happen. But anyway, that's
I don't think they had any choice in it, because these are players who had actually nominated for the draft.
Yeah,
and
but
so
having nominated for
from.
But having nominated from the draft, they didn't get picked up, so they signed a contract with a South Australian club or West Australian club or whatever. I mean, they're registered in a competition. Fair enough, the AFL is a higher tier competition, but the simple fact is they're registered to a competition. That club deserves some sort of compensation for losing the player. Anyway, I'm not quite sure how that mechanism works, but getting back to the Saints, I think they need to have some sort of dispensation with being able to pick up players of some sort, but it's very sad for those two. I take a lot of, and I know we pin a lot of shit on Jack Watts as well, but I take a lot of exception to these people who say, Paddy McCartan, what a flop as a number one pick, and even Jack Watts, what a flop as a number one pick. Why aren't we talking about the people who picked them? Why aren't we talking about the people who bloody touted them in their phantom drafts, or their bloody, Callum Toomeys of the world and all that picked these kids? The kid didn't ask to be number one. The kid just wanted to have a game of footy. It's not the kid's fault that he was picked too high, or he didn't fulfil his potential, or he was overrated, or other people caught up to it. I just think it's a bit hard on these kids.
Yeah, well, that was one of my favourites, the great Matthew Rendell, who I think personally is and I'll happily put my name to this. I think he's one of the most overrated recruiters that has ever been. And he said that Jack Watts was going to be the second coming, and he was closely followed.
Oh, where'd Pete go?
I'm here.
No, you just it was going to be the second coming of something, and then you died. I think.
Oh, sorry, mate.
I thought you got struck down.
Well, yeah.
This is the second coming now.
Criticising Matthew Rendell is fraught with danger, but I think that his reputation far exceeds his actual ability, and two absolute lemons there from from Matt Rendell. But anyway, they were supposed to be two of the greatest players of all time. Sean McKernan. He was going to be the greatest player of all time, one of the greatest players of all time, Sean McKernan.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, moving on.
Just to kind of link into this a little bit, so I'm not sure how many people are actually aware of this. So a 3-time world champion cyclist has died at the age of 23. She was an American cyclist. Now, she took her own life, and she had suffered a concussion in the months before she killed herself, but she was also undertaking quite a lot of she had the most amazing academic career. She was doing postgraduate work as well as training as this high-powered athlete. And one of the things that her family did talk about, and she herself did talk about, was the pressure from social media and other things as well that was impacting on her and having to try to fit everything in. So we really do need to, and we compound to this a little bit because, you know, we say things about players, etc. And we need to be considerate that these are people we are talking about, but the amount of pressure that is on these high-powered athletes, and with a lot that kind of pressures on them, and has sometimes some very horrible consequences.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Nick. And I think, you know, over the last couple of seasons, I think we've made a conscious effort on this podcast to maybe be a little bit less scathing and a little bit more considered about what we say about certain players and keep it to the footy and all that. And I think it's time that as a society we started to take responsibility for the things that we say, because it has some terrible consequences. And, you know, that's a terribly sad example that you've just brought up there. And, you know, the last thing you want, Paddy McCartan, for example, he wants to play footy. He's obviously got a couple of health issues. You know, he was taken number one, rightly or wrongly, and people hold him to that ranking. And we need to remember there's a kid that's probably going to lose his AFL dream and has to live the next 60 years of his life as, you know, a normal person, you know, with these health issues. So we need to just get behind the lad.
You know, particularly about the very highly rated draft picks, because, as you said, they're not saying we are the number one draft pick, etc. And it is, and also the other in reverse the criticism as well. And you know, in one in particular, watching the coaches on the weekend, I think to myself, this guy's been wrapped up to be the second coming of God, and he just looks like another young player out there trying to get a game at the moment.
And that's all he is.
Well, that's my point, Nicky. You know, but he didn't say he was. But there were people there saying he could go and play AFL now and star, blah blah blah. He's just another guy there trying to get a game.
And I guess that's where I have a problem with the Hutchinsons and the Corns of the world, because they make a living out of sensationalism and wrapping players up and, you know, hyping players up and then smashing players when they're down and all the rest of it, and finding, you know, gossip and scandal and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, there are people on the other end of this, and they're generally young people. And I think as a society, the best way that we can deal with it is just to not, and it's probably happening because no one listens to SEN now, but, you know, we need to stop listening to these blokes. Ignore them and hopefully they go away, because who wants to be party to someone else's downfall? I certainly don't.
No.
And anyway, so moving on to something slightly happier.
Some footy on the weekend.
No, I was just going to say congratulations first off to Mr. and Mrs. Walker, who got married on Sunday with a little surprise wedding for everybody.
And, you know, I'm very disappointed in myself because I should have had the Married at First Sight theme song for that particular announcement, and I've forgotten.
Oh, no, we don't want the same result as they get.
Now, Nikki, you'll know this. Nikki, you'll know this. What's the deal with Bernie Vince? Why didn't he turn up? What's the story there?
Okay, so Bernie played in the cricket grand final, which they won.
Yeah.
So what happens in Sainsbury when you win the cricket grand final?
Oh, he just stayed at the club.
A little bit. But he was very good the next morning because he took the breathalyzer test before driving to make sure he had it. Well, he couldn't drive, so his dad had to drive. So he rocked up 30 minutes late after the ceremony.
Oh, and he would have been best man, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
As
Good
Tex
old
said,
Bandit.
he needs to look at his time management skills.
Yeah, that's the ultimate. Anyway, let's move on and talk about some footy, shall we? Let's talk about the girls first because they were bloody magnificent.
Not for 3/4. I was very angry with them.
Come on, they were fine.
Some credit to the opposition, though, Nicky.
Oh, yeah. Completely credit to the opposition, but we were still making some stupid decisions, and which they were pressuring us into. It was good to see we started to correct bits as it went on, and then they actually, I didn't realise they'd lost 2 rotations, so that also partly explains that last quarter, but they could not. And it was such a given. You could see how much fitter we were, that to come off for an interchange, they couldn't sprint. It took them a lot longer to do their interchanges, whereas even to those last couple of minutes, we were still sprinting off to be able to run back on. Now, our girls have said that they're feeling very tired, but I think they're less tired than a lot of other teams.
You mean from the games they've played so far, Nicky?
Yeah.
How they go with the 22-match season then?
Well, because then you would actually have longer pre-seasons, you would actually build up into that. And you hear AFL players that they talk about how tired they are at the start of the season. You get a little bit more match fitness, you can cope with it. So and some players have to be rested, even in the men's, because they can't cope with the full season. So
fair comment, yeah.
you've got to have the right amount of pre-season beforehand. And Ebony Marinoff today talked about that she's now able to actually sprint faster than she ever has before because she didn't play a lot of footy over winter. She had a back injury last year, so that held her back a little bit. She just had to play through it. Because she then did a lot of rehab work, she's been able to get this full pre-season in. She's now able to run out games a lot better. She's getting tagged every game. She's working with Bungie on how to cope with that. And they tend to stop tagging her after a quarter because it doesn't work. So obviously that teaching there has worked. But it was very nice to hear that she's feeling so much fitter, and that's one of the things that we worked on, that fitness first, and then we worked on skills.
Marinoff has got a massive work rate, and if you could transfer her work rate even into every male in the AFL's side, you wouldn't lose too many games because she'd be beaten one way or the other.
No, she's done really well this season, and she's still got flaws in her game.
But
still want to about, and she can still make some stupid decisions at times. But if we can, and those things are fixable. And I just think about how much better she's going to be with this experience that's coming through.
It's hard to know what else to say about the girls because it was just more of the same. It's been that way for the last probably 4 weeks. With them, they're playing, systematic footy. They're finding targets. They're using the ball really well. They're running really hard, and sprinkling some really A-grade talent. They're obviously going to be very hard to beat. Not an easy game though coming up against the D's this week to round off the regular season though, Nick.
No, but it's very interesting that the same messaging keeps coming through from all the players is that we've never beaten Melbourne. So I think that's the forefront of the mind of all they're thinking about is we have to beat Melbourne. We've never beaten them. We're going to do this. So I'm a little bit afraid for Melbourne. And I think whilst they can put on some really great pressure, etc. as well, they do not have the talent they used to have. And especially in that midfield in comparison to our midfield. I mean, it's pretty outstanding. We once again, I think, got 3 players in the team of the week. So Aaron's been in there 5 times. Marinoff's been in there 4. Foley's been in there. Hatchard's been in there. So it's a nice little problem to have.
And still no spot for Sarah Perkins?
Not with the game style we're playing at the moment, and I just don't. I think her back injury just hurt her too much. And I think that's what it is. I'd really like to see her go away, work on it, and possibly actually rest a bit more. I know she does love playing for Hawthorn in the VFLW because that's her team she actually supported as a child. I mean, that's an absolute dream for anybody to play for the club that you supported as a kid. But I think that what's probably works out quite best is that you rest up during winter. You don't play the full season. The same thing happened with most of our other girls because with the NT Thunder, you can actually only play 10 games. And they could only have, I think it was 6 AFL-listed players on the day in a team because basically the NT Thunder was beating everybody.
Yeah.
So they brought that in. And I think that's actually worked quite well. So I think Sarah needs to just work on those things, get her injury right, don't rush back, and have some rest.
Yeah, I can't see a spot for it because of the way with the type of game we're playing at the moment, with a basically a small forward line with one key marking player and perhaps Phillips resting up there as well. It works beautifully for any sort of random ball because you've got quick, loose players running around the ground. And, the moves that Clark made, moving various players who had that pace and those skill up forward, has really been the difference between what the team would have been and what it is now. And I think that he's made some magical moves, but they're all very quick running players, and I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, interesting in that the last quarter he actually put Randall in the forward line because we were having trouble marking. So even though but she is also a quick player, but she did play more with a half forward. She stayed out still a bit.
She didn't. But it is pace that counts, Nikki.
Oh,
it's the
completely.
pace.
And the thing is, though, that when you're a natural footballer and able to read the ball, which we saw in the first season, Sarah has that ability to do. And that actually can help. It's not necessarily speed with the body, but it's speed with that disposal. And her kick is an amazing weapon to have. I still think we're the team with the most players who can actually kick 40 metres, 30 to 40 metres. And there was a couple of pieces of play that happened on the weekend that are just like, I'd like to see a couple of the AFL men's team do that type of play. You don't see it that often, and how clean it was. Stevie Lee's last goal, to me, I mean, you had that she did the smart thing of kicking it off the ground because she knew there was Erin. Erin kind of did that little fumble to give her that little bit of possession. You had Stevie Lee running past. But what people forget is there's also Danielle Ponta.
Yep.
And the distance that Ponta was running from her as to be that other option, and the smartness of that kid to have been coached that way as well, of this is where you need to be for the structure for that handball, is just amazing. And just think what Chloe Shear is going to be next year when she's actually fit. That girl's going to break the competition open.
And with a year of experience under her belt as well.
Yeah, and we're still playing her a bit of little splashes in the midfield. But we have to win just to really make sure that we can get in. Please don't let there be a draw, AFL, you bastards. But it does seem that they're thinking of doing a double header if we do make it through to the finals. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we'll wait and see. But fingers crossed we make it through to finals. We should. We've got the talent, we've got the coaching staff, and I think we've definitely got the willpower. And that's the most important thing to win.
One question I've been meaning to raise with you for some weeks now, Nikki. You talk about like the 25-metre rule in the SANFL. I think the 50-metre rule in the women's game is ludicrous because none of these women can kick 50 metres. So why would you give a free kick that's longer than they can kick?
Yeah, that one should have been implemented from the start. That was a no-brainer. But, of course, the AFL can't think of things like that. I mean, they did actually figure it out that the issue with the last touch rule that in the forward lines just doesn't work, and they did change that. So fair play to them. They're actually slightly better than the men's rules committee that they restricted that one, but I do think it does need to be a 25-metre penalty in the AFLW. And the other very interesting thing at that crowd at Unley, so fantastic turnout of 7,700 plus people, was that Nicole Stevenson was there, and just there was a bit of vision of her just still standing there and looking at the crowd that is hanging around after the game going, this is what the AFLW can be, but you need to put it at the proper venues and it needs to be played at the right time, and you will then get these crowds turning up.
Yeah, it was a classic example of good fixturing, really. And Unley is a good ground, I think, for AFLW. I think there's a couple of good grounds in the SANFL that are good for AFLW. It's a family-friendly venue. It's got the right amount of capacity. It's the right size to promote a decent score. Even places like Princes Park and Carlton, it's just too big. Play it on these smaller grounds and allow it to be more intimate and allow the girls to enjoy the atmosphere that comes with having 7,000 in a ground of that size. Anyway, let's move on to JLT2, but before I do, I just want to give a shout out to our patrons, Megan, Michael, Nicholas, Pam, Paul and J-Mac. Don't forget, if you want to support the CrowCast this year, you can hop on to patreon.com/AFL CrowCast and join up on any tier you like. Various tiers get various benefits, of course, or you can just simply give us a donation. We are also looking for sponsors for our shows this year. Adam Sherry, of course, with Harvest of Fluorio was fantastic for us later in the year last year. So if you do run a business or you have some sort of decision-making power where you work and you're looking for a bit of exposure, hit me up on at feedback@aflcrowcast.com or send me a DM on Twitter or flick us a message on Facebook or hit me up on Big Footy or punch me out in the street or whatever else you want to do, and we can organise something there as well. So let's hit JLT2. How did we go?
Well, I thought we went very, very well, actually.
I'm a little scared.
In what way, Nikki?
For the other teams.
No.
Getting a bit carried away there, I think.
Right, just give Nikki
there was some very nice things that came out of that game that was under a lot of pressure. Because
they had about 6 out. They had 6 out, didn't they? Took a couple off at half time.
They did, but what's their talent list like? That the others that they then bring in is still amazing talent. And they play an actual nice, hard brand of footy. They put a lot of pressure on you to make mistakes, and that's what they were doing. So that was some decent opposition we were up against.
Yeah,
and I was quite impressed with how we stood up and how we coped with that pressure and how we didn't panic.
Well, I've been interested what the others think of the panel. The commentators saying that the JLT games are played about 75-80% capacity. I didn't think our game against GWS, I didn't see any spite in the game. I thought it was played pretty flat out for most of the game because I thought it was very, very competitive. And because you had two very good midfields, although they had one or two of their very, very best out, they still have some very, very good players. I mean, Canelio, I just think he's a champion, absolute champion. And Taranto, he's going to be a future gun. There's no doubt about that. And I thought there were some very good battles. And Whitfield, I mean, he is a champion. They got a lot of good players, as you said, Nicky. And I thought
we couldn't do any more than what we did, Macca. I mean, I'm not denigrating the performance at all. It was described in the media as a bit of a bruise-free game, but I only saw a few parts of the game. I didn't see it all, so I'm not going to stick my neck out too far there. But look, we got out to I think it was a 37 or 38 point lead at one point. We still held on by 18 points. We've done all that we can in this pre-season to have ourselves, pretty fine-tuned. We've got games into guys that we really need to get games into, particularly Brad Crouch and Brodie Smith, those two players coming back from long-term injuries.
Big ticks for both.
Big ticks for both. And I don't think we could have done any more in terms of getting our squad, healthy, fit, and games into the long-term injured from last year. And looking like that we can play some good football this year. So how that translates to the major the business end of the season where we're actually playing for points I guess remains to be seen. But I read a little bit around, it's a little bit cocky with Hawthorn coming up, and I just keep thinking, we still haven't beaten Hawthorn at Adelaide Oval. And even 2017, we were absolutely red-hot favourites to flog them in 2017. They came over here with half a team and we were on fire, and they still beat us. And so, I'm just very, very cautious. We've got such a poor record, particularly in recent years against Hawthorn. So they'll still bring over a very, very competitive outfit, and it'll be good going football. But look, no, I mean, you can't do any more, I don't think, than what we've done in our pre-season, and we deserve a big pat on the back and a big tick, everyone involved down there. When you think of how where we were at this point last year, I don't think we could have done any more than give ourselves the kind of start that we've given ourselves this year.
Yeah, that was going to be my point, Pete. The fact that if you made the comparison between 2017, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? And at times, we've actually struggled to talk about stuff on the cast in the pre-season because it's just been nothing to talk about, because there hasn't been any drama from the club. There hasn't been a long, list of injuries. There hasn't been any of that. It's just been a very measured and controlled pre-season, in good spirit by all accounts. The players seem engaged. They seem to be enjoying themselves. I'm not as bullish as you, Nick. The signs are fantastic, but I think that we do have some weaknesses that could be exploited by certain teams. I'm going to be very interested to see how we go in round one against Hawthorn, trying to play that chippy possession game. I'm also going to be very keen to see how we go locking down their small forward line. And I still think at times we looked a little bit slow out of the contest against GWS. I think once we got the game played on our terms, we looked very, very good. But I still think around the ball we can be a little bit one-paced, and Brad is going to be key, I think, to giving us a little bit of burst out of the packs. I'm not going to go on about what I think about the rucks and our marking for power up forward, but I don't think there's any team that's perfect, and I think we have a lot of strength in a lot of areas, and we are going to be hard to beat if we maintain our fitness and form.
Well, and that's where I was kind of getting at, Phoenix. If everything's going right, I think we can be a very scary side.
We should be. We should do very well because, Nikki, the one thing that champion data, firstly, the one thing that most people say is, you need a very good defence to win the game. And champion data rates our defence clearly the number one defence in the AFL. And I don't think there is any doubt about that. I think when you look at the individuals, and they listed 5 individuals who they think are very, very classy and make up a top defence. And that didn't include people like Brown, for example. So there's no doubt about it. Our defence is very good. I think the midfield now, with Brad Crouch back in there and going very well, and slowly looks right back to his very best form, and he's fit. And Tex Walker actually providing very good leading up at centre half forward. It looks all very good, but I think Fiend made a comment before. I think it was Fiend that said something about we do have some weaknesses, and the biggest one I think is that, and which has shown up in both games that we've played so far, is when a team gets a run against us, it's the ability to stop that run. And I know the 6-6-6 situation makes it so much harder to do that, but I think that's our one weakness.
Well, Macca, get shot for saying this, till I'm blue in the face, but this particular playing group has been going missing for a number of years. So that's just something that's just something in the makeup of this playing group that we've all just got to,
the
suck
DNA,
up, basically.
Yeah.
Yep, It's in the DNA, and that's going to happen throughout the course of the year. And they're going to be games they will inexplicably lose, and we just have to be prepared for that.
Well, it's hurtful. It's very hurtful because that has happened every year. There's been there'll be games that we've lost. We should have lost. You made the one against Hawthorn, for example. I don't know how the hell we could possibly have lost that. But even in a game where we've been bolting, where we might be 30, 40, 50 points up, then all of a sudden it's as if we just tuck all the weapons away and just give the opposition a crack at it. And I suppose the one thing that we lack is a little bit of ruthlessness.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that, Maka.
That's probably what it is. We're not ruthless enough. So
Yep.
we just need a little bit of nasty, and I don't mean go around hitting people, but that a little bit
Foot
of
on the
meanness.
throat.
Little bit of the foot on the throat, and
Little
I
gut
actually
punches.
no, because then we'll finally get suspended. Somebody or player will be suspended for that, and it'll finally be us. I think actually Brad does help with that because he does like the physical aspect. And if you do try and do anything to him, Matt then gets really pissed off, and it's kind of funny. To me, you just see those two. I'm with you on that. That yes, you're going to have those games that you I can't speak today either. Inexplicably drop, because that's just the nature of team sport, and trying to get 20 players all on the same wavelength and all mentally in the same zone is a bloody hard thing to do. I really like Chase Jones's game, and the thing I was most pleased about was 20 possessions, over 20 possessions for Riley Knight.
Yeah, which doesn't happen often. It's been a weakness of his, or an area to work on, I should say. His ability to get enough of the pill to actually be an impact player rather than just a hassler. And you're right, Nick. He had a good game, I thought. And
he really gave it to Smith, who kicked to the wrong spot into the forward line so Davis could mark it. He let him have it with both throws. And he should have. I mean, that was a stuff up by Smith. He should never have kicked it to the advantage of Davis when you've got an outnumber like that. It should have been out into the pocket to let Smith Knight outwork him. I do think probably one of the best things about that was that they put him on Caniglio to tag him. So, of course, that takes him to the ball. Now, he's done those kind of jobs before and he's just negated, but he was negating and then getting it. So a few people are worried about whether he's got a place in the side, and I think he definitely does have a place in the team. We do know that Pike likes him, and I think that ability to stop, but then to also be quite offensive and push that ball forward is an advantage for us to have as a different look of a player that we might need occasionally through the midfield.
Did anybody... sorry?
No, go on.
Anybody get a chance to have a look at the Rezzies down at the parade? Anyone get a look at that game at all, or just going by reports?
No, I didn't see it.
No,
yeah, just going by reports. And by the sound of it, what is it? They had 6 to 8 top choice players out for Norwood.
Yep.
So it's like, what do you really take out of that?
Can't read too much into that, I think.
Yeah.
Stengel kicked another 4 goals, and I think that he obviously has had an excellent pre-season. I did read a little bit about the query on his defensive pressure. So that I think that they're just so hell-bent on looking for people to fill those sort of really, really turn up the heat defensive forward roles that I think that even though he's kicking a few goals here and there, he'll have to that's an aspect of his game he's going to have to work on if he's going to break through.
Yeah, and I think that's tank-related more than anything else. I think he doesn't have the ability to run both ways. But it's very promising that in the twilight of Eddie's career, we've got a lad here who obviously knows where the goals is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Goals are, I should say. And
he was going to correct you on the grammar.
Yeah, I know. And he's got 12 months to work on his fitness and on his defensive capacity. And I I rate him. I think, it's very valuable to have a bloke who knows how to kick goals and can make something out of nothing, and it looks like we've got another one. The one player that I probably am worried about form-wise at the moment, apart from the ruck situation, obviously, I feel like Josh Jenkins is struggling to find his feet with the new configurations, and I felt like he's been doing all right when he's been pinch hitting in the ruck, but he hasn't really made his presence felt up forward as yet.
I think you raised a very good point. The new configuration means that he's always going to have somebody attending very closely to him when there's a centre bounce situation. And I think he didn't do too badly because he's not that big, high-flying screamer mark taker. Somebody said that Jenkins is just going through the motions. Well, he may well be going through the motions. I don't know, but he hasn't been starring. But I don't think he's been disgraceful. I just think that he's not going to be that well suited by the 666 situation, whereas I think that probably suits a Walker a lot better at the moment. But I think he's a smart footballer, Jenkins. I think he's getting smarter. And he's very good at getting them when they come over the top. So he still sneaks a couple there. So he'll do his job.
Two players that I was really, really hoping to see strong pre-seasons out of, and just try and sort of push, if not be selected, certainly push towards the surface. The big easy, Himmelberg, and also Benny Davis, who started off like a shot out of a barrel in the under-23 trial, but unfortunately we haven't seen him again due to that, I assume, knee issue. So just very disappointed for those two, hoping that we would see those two young lads put their best foot forward, but not to be.
Ben actually played in the SNFL trial.
Oh, he did play, did he?
He did play. Apparently, I saw a couple of reports of that he was involved in some really nice of the movement downfield. Not too sure how much game time he had, but it was nice to see him back. But yeah, a little bit concerned.
That is good news. That is good news. Thanks for that. Because in all the reading that I tried to do on that trial, I could not dig out his name anywhere. So I just assumed that he may have missed or had limited game time because of that knee.
Yeah, the Berg's a worry.
But with growing pains, etc., and we do know that he's a very nice talent. I mean, he's even half the player of his brother. That's a bloody nice footballer to have. Plus, he's taller. I'd be interested to see how long whether he will be available for the next SNFL trial. Or you definitely want him available at the start of the SNFL season. Otherwise, I think that's possibly this is our one injury big issue that we've got. But the one thing I do, Pete, did you get a chance to see Chase Jones's first goal and how it came about?
Didn't see it. I heard he was involved in
tackle
build-ups, and some tackling. So yeah.
I think just with that one particular bit, he definitely put himself into very strong consideration for round one. I mean, he's up against Tomlinson, who's a quick player, taller than him, stronger than him, and he just got that tackle beautifully because they talk about, how great he is as a tackler, but they actually forget, the commentators, that he's actually also very quick.
Yeah, lightning.
He was able to close down that space much quicker than Tomlinson expected, and it just spun him around. And he didn't even wait for the umpire's call. It was like, the ball is loose, I'm getting it, and I'm kicking that goal. He was playing football, and that's what you want to see. But the nice little strength that he had then, so if you can get a chance to watch the highlights, I highly recommend it.
Just answering Adam Shez on the chat, talking about the Bergs, the brothers Berg, not from South Australia, mate. I think they're Queenslanders, actually.
They are.
Pretty sure they're Queenslanders, so that's where they hail from. So, and I know that the smaller of the Bergs is out of contract at the end of this year, so I don't know whether there's any chance of poaching him, but certainly we'll see.
We did bid on him.
PJ Crows, no, nothing, mate. I don't have anything on ruck trade rumours other than what we were talking about last year, but no, nothing new.
Well, so just to round it off, considering that was the last hit out before the season proper, do we feel that we have an answer? Is Jake Kelly the answer for Lukey Brown in the back pocket? Do we feel that Richard Douglas starts? How does Hugh Greenwood get in? Does Chase Jones get a run? What's the feeling?
Well,
I think Kelly's a yes.
Kelly's a definite yes. I think his form's been very good, and he will. I always make that one odd mistake which looks bad, but I think in general, if you had to mark him out of 100, I'd give him about 85 at the moment. I think he's done pretty good. Douglas will definitely get a game,
but I'd like to see him pushed out fairly quickly.
Whether he's there by the end of the year, that's another story. And you'd hope that some of the young blokes might squeeze him out by then. McKay won't get in. There's no spot for McKay. And who's the other one you mentioned, Fiend?
Chase Jones.
Chase Jones.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. Greenwood's got a. Greenwood would always come in my team, straight back into my team, and he was one that they mentioned had a very, very good SAFL game and was a bit brutal beast at times. No, I like Greenwood. He comes in, but
I think Greenwood would have to possibly play definitely another one SANFL trial game, maybe two.
Okay,
I think just with that. The fitness that he had to have that little mini pre-season. And if we've learnt anything from what we've done previously, they've got to have a bit more of game time built into them. And I think we have learnt that because we've seen Brad Crouch play full, for a midfielder, pretty close to full game times for the under-23 trial, then the 2 JLTs. We haven't put him on ice. We haven't rested him. We've pushed him out because he needs match fitness. I think that same issue is there with Greenwood, so I think that's what we'll want to see from him.
Does that leave Ellis Yeoman in the team then, as our big?
No, I can't see. Unfortunately, I can't see Curly making the cut. But I'd like to see it. But there's just a log jam. When you've got a fit, healthy. Yeah. Hang on, I haven't finished, Nikki. When you've got a log jam like that, it's very, very difficult. We're fit. We've got very, very few injuries. We've certainly got no injuries to sort of what you'd consider first choice players, and so there's a number of guys who were regular selections last year. I mean, you've got Gallucci is another one, Murphy's another one. A lot of those guys who got plenty of game time last year are going to be struggling on the fringes, I think.
No, I was just agreeing with you that it was a very nice log jam we have, Pete. Just going back to the Chase Jones, I think. He was possibly not in consideration going into JLT1, but his performance was enough to get him starting on the field for JLT2. That tells me he's definitely in round one considerations from the coaching staff because you don't start him against GWS and JLT2 where you're looking at your best 22. And we never brought on Rob, and we only brought on Ellis Yeoman and Fogg. I think he came on just a little bit towards the end of the third quarter. And he was our Gibbs kind of interchange as such. But Fogg didn't come on till the last quarter. So we were trying to play the round one team as much as possible. So I think he's definitely in it.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know. To me, he's the marginal one. The question I was going to ask is what is the story with Gallucci at the moment?
Well, he's had an injury. Sorry, Fiend, you go.
No, sorry, Pete. Yeah. Oh dear.
Funny.
Injury. You take it, Pete. I lost my shit.
I thought that'd make you laugh.
Yeah.
He has had an injury. Apparently, it's reported he's had an injury, and he's just working his way back, Macca. So that I think that's meant that other than a run in the under-23 trial, he's put himself right behind the 8 ball. No JLT time at all. So,
Right.
but with that said, I thought he was terrific last year, and he certainly shapes to me as a player that should make the best 22. But again, they're just going to have to wait and see how form and injuries pan out as the season wears on. Because as I say, there's a lot of guys that got a lot of game time last year that may not necessarily be the automatic selections that they were.
Yeah, because I saw Glitchy. It's a player that could have the real breakout year this year. He was just building very, very nicely at the end of last year. So it's a pity about that. Still, that's football, isn't it?
Yeah, he had the foot injury. He had that little bit of time off, came back to training. They put him in the under-23 game, and he struggled. He actually couldn't really run like we know that he did. They took him off, and they've rested him since. So they're getting that foot right before they put him back in again.
What is the problem, Dickie?
I think it's trying to remember. It was a bit of a foot injury, ankle,
got a sore
something
foot.
like. Yeah, and for the type of runner he is, that's not an injury you